Welcome back. Till now we have seen sex cord stromal cell tumor and we were up to feminizing tumors in which granulosa cell is the common granulosa cell tumor which secretes estrogen, and other tumors are thecoma and fibroma. Now let's go ahead for the other variety, that is germ cell tumors. They account almost for 30% of the ovarian tumors and commonest in the first 2 decades of life. The most common GCT, that is germ cell tumor, is mature teratoma or dermoid, and most common malignant germ cell tumor is dysgerminoma. Please understand the difference in two questions. If the question is like this, that most common germ cell tumor, then the answer is dermoid cyst or mature teratoma, and if the question is most common malignant germ cell tumor, then the answer is dysgerminoma. 75% in stage 1 disease they get detected. They are mostly unilateral. Only 10% to 15% are seen on both the sides. They are seen in phenotypic females with abnormal gonads. In intersexuality we have learned about this, that person is phenotypically female, genotype may be male or female. They have either streak gonads or there is gonadal dysgenesis. Conditions like testicular feminizing syndrome or Klinefelter syndrome, or where there is gonadal dysgenesis. So these germ cell tumors are seen in this dysgenetic gonads or streak gonads like in Turner syndrome. So it is always advised to take out these streak gonads or dysgenetic gonads because they have very high risk of developing germ cell tumors. Now let's see dysgerminoma in detail. It's the most common malignant germ cell tumor. Solid tumor, unilateral, average age is around 20 years. It can be found at gonadal site or sometimes extragonadal site. This is the most radiosensitive tumor. Again, remember this point. This is most radiosensitive tumor and it secretes LDH and placental alkaline phosphatase. So these are the markers for this tumor. Preferred method of treatment is still surgery. This is contradictory. I am saying that this tumor is the most radiosensitive tumor, and at the same time I am telling you the preferred mode of treatment is surgery. Why so? Because look at the age of a lady when this tumor is more common, that is 20 years of age. At this particular age, if there is unilateral ovary having dysgerminoma, can we expose her to radiation? No, because this is a young girl. There is her future like childbearing, reproductive function, menstrual function. So radiotherapy, even though the tumor is most sensitive for, cannot be the treatment of choice. Preferred method of choice is surgery, removing that tumor from one side and keeping the other ovary because she has to complete her menstrual and childbearing function. Chemotherapy, the drugs used here in germ cell tumor are bleomycin, etoposide and cisplatin. Teratomas. Even you had short notes, so in UG exams also this was important, and it's important from MCQ point of view also. Derived from 2 to 3 embryonic layers. There are two varieties, one is mature and one is immature teratoma. Mature means the benign teratoma, and the other name of this, which is commonly used in practice, is dermoid cyst. It's the commonest benign ovarian tumor in reproductive age group, usually unilateral. Only in 10 to 15% cases we may see bilateral. It contains all types of tissues, teeth, bone, hair, cartilage, sebaceous material. Thyroid can also be seen in this cyst. There is this dermoid process or Rokitansky protuberance seen in these teratomas. This teratoma is otherwise famous for the most common complication, that is torsion. I told you that torsion is possible in a cyst which has a pedicle and the cyst has to be freely mobile. Then it can very well undergo that one twist, and because of the veins and ticking of pulsatility of the veins or the artery, the rotation goes on increasing. Dermoid fulfills all this criteria. It has a pedicle, it is freely mobile because it is benign tumor, And the added thing is it has mixed echogenicity. We know that it shows it has different types of tissue. So this is solid plus cystic. So the echogenicity or the heaviness is different. Somewhere it is solid, somewhere it is cystic. And that makes it more prone for torsion. Even malignant transformation can be seen in teratomas only in 2% cases. But unfortunately, it is squamous cell carcinoma. Because of the stratified squamous epithelium of the dermoid, it leads to squamous cell carcinoma and the prognosis is very bad. So, even though the malignant transformation is seen in only 2%, we should always keep it in mind that every dermoid is not benign. There can be squamous cell carcinoma in that, and the prognosis in that case would be very bad. The immature variety of teratoma, that is a malignant teratoma, it's rare. It mostly seen in females under 20 years of age, again unilateral, classified according to the differentiation and quality of immature tissue. If the tissue is poorly differentiated, then it is more malignant. If the tissue is well differentiated, then it is benign. There can also be monodermal teratomas, in which, for example, we have struma overi, where only mature thyroid tissue is seen and presentation of this tumor is hyperthyroidism. There can also be carcinoid tumors. They can be primary or metastatic. These are dermoids with malignant changes. They have argentaphenomas and they secrete 5-HT. So this is a tumor which can give rise to symptoms of flushing and cyanosis in patient. So again, from MCQ point of view, both the tumors are important. Struma overi, it's a monodermal, presentation is like hyperthyroidism picture, and carcinoid tumor will have flushing and cyanosis. Krukenberg tumor. This is a metastatic tumor of ovary. Metastasis from CA stomach. It reaches to ovary and gives rise to Krukenberg tumor due to retrograde lymphatic spread. It is always bilateral, smooth surface, waxy consistency, and retain shape of normal ovary. Signet ring cells are classical of Krukenberg and the marker is CEA. Now let's remember few points or histological hallmarks of different ovarian tumors. I know it's difficult to remember all these things, but still you have to try to remember most of them because they are quite important from MCQ. Serous epithelial tumors, they will have psammoma bodies. Clear cell tumors will have Hobnail cells. Brenner tumor, Walthard cell rest or nests. Dysgerminoma will have lymphocytic infiltration, fibrous septa in the large polygonal cells. Teratomas will show all types, 2 to 3 embryonal layer, skin, teeth, bones, hair, cartilage, neural tissue and thyroid. Endodermal sinus tumor will have Schiller dual bodies, embryonal carcinoma, embroid bodies. Granulosa cell tumors, Kohl-Hexner bodies. Leydig cell tumor, Rienkes crystals, and Krukenberg tumor will show signet ring cells. Now once a patient comes with abdominal mass and it is ovarian of origin, we have to differentiate clinically and with the help of investigations that whether this mass is benign or malignant. So there are few important things on examination which suggest that this tumor is likely to be benign or this tumor is likely to be malignant. Age. Age-wise, if we see the patient is in perimenopausal or menopausal age group, then most likely it is epithelial, and in epithelial it will be most likely to be malignant. If the patient is having cachexia or history of weight loss along with this abdominal mass, it suggests that it is a malignant ovarian mass. On examination, if we find big, large, enlarged lymph nodes, again it goes in favor of malignancy. Presence of ascites goes in favor of malignancy. If the tumor is unilateral, mostly, I'm saying mostly, not all the time, it is benign. But if it is bilateral, mostly, again I'm not saying always, if it is bilateral, then it is more malignant. Tumor mobile in the abdominal cavity on examination, benign. If it is fixed, more likely it is malignant. Solid, if it is cystic, benign. Solid, malignant. Even mixed variety, malignant. Unilocular, simple clear fluid unilocular cyst, mostly benign. Multilocular, malignant. Thin septae on ultrasound, less than 2 mm, benign. Thick septations, more than 3 mm, malignant. Along with septations, if there are papillary excrescence seen, then malignancy. If you put color and notice the vascularity, normal vascularity, benign. Highly vascular, malignant. Resistance index decreased, malignant. Resistance index normal, benign. So these are few points on behalf of which, or by seeing or examining, we can have some judgment that we are dealing with either benign tumor or malignant tumor. Metastatic ovarian spread. The spread of these tumors can be direct, the neighboring organ, tubes, uterus, bladder, or it can be transcoelomic along the peritoneal surface. Lymphatic spread is usually to the pelvic and para-aortic lymph nodes, and hematogenous spread is to the liver and lung. Clinical features, the presentation, as I told you initially, that most of the time they remain asymptomatic till they grow in size, or till there is some hormone secretion, or there are pressure symptoms. Till then they usually don't give rise to any symptom, and that is why we get to diagnose them very late. After the increase in size, there can be presentation with lump in abdomen or some kind of abdominal discomfort, maybe because of the size of the lump or maybe because of presence of ascites. There is pain sometimes which is referred to the medial surface of thigh. Ovarian tumor gives rise to pain which is referred towards medial surface of thigh. And occasionally there can be abnormal or postmenopausal bleeding. The word occasionally is very important. They usually don't give rise to any menstrual symptoms. Occasionally there is abnormal bleeding or sometimes postmenopausal bleeding if it is hormone secreting tumor. In advanced stages, the patients will have history of weight loss, cachexia and anemia. They may present sometimes with acute abdomen in case the tumor undergoes torsion, or there is sudden rupture, or there is hemorrhage in the tumor. So this is in general clinical symptoms. What are the signs? When we examine the patient, there can be enlargement of supraclavicular, axillary or inguinal lymph nodes. Breast examination is mandatory because CA ovary, CA breast, they go hand in hand. Chest examination for pleural effusion, hydrothorax, MIGS and pseudomIGS. Abdominal examination, presence or absence of ascites, liver, whether it is enlarged or not, and then proper lump examination. We have to see how is the skin over it, whether it is stretched, dilated veins are seen or not, how is the mass, mobile, non-mobile, whether lower margin can be reached. If lower margin of the tumor cannot be reached, means it's a pelvic mass, more likely to be ovarian. Then how is the size, solid, cystic, mobile side to side, moves with respiration, doesn't move with respiration. So all are those points which we have to see on examination per abdomen. Pelvic examination bimanual, and to complete rectal examination. If there is any irregular solid nodularity felt, suggest malignancy. Free nodules in pouch of Douglas. Investigations. We'll start with screening. As I said that it is much important to diagnose these ovarian tumors early to have good prognosis. Screening has a very important role. It is required in high-risk females who have some history, and especially in menopausal age group where the chances of epithelial ovarian tumor is very high. For screening, don't start thinking of BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene. This investigation is not very cheap, or it cannot be used for screening. So what is the easiest mode? Screening test always have to fulfill the criteria of having freely accessibility, easy to perform, cheap so that everyone can afford it. So then these criteria can be fulfilled by TVS. So we can do TVS in high-risk patients or postmenopausal ladies every 6 monthly and measure ovarian volume. If the ovarian volume postmenopausal, it has to reduce. If ovarian volume is more than 8 cm3, then we should suspect or investigate further to rule out ovarian malignancy. FNSE from ascitic fluid cytology, all tumor markers in the form of CA-125, CEA, CT and MRI are the other investigation. CA-125 is not at all a diagnostic test or marker for epithelial ovarian carcinoma. It just has prognostic value because you know CA-125 is present in almost 7, 8 or more than that conditions. It's not just very exclusive of CA ovary. It can be raised in pregnancy, in PID, fibroid, endometriosis. These are benign conditions. But in malignancy, it can be present in CA colon, CA pancreas, CA breast. So it's not exclusive of CA-125. But yes, it has a prognostic value. You have a patient with ovarian mass and CA-125 raised. Patient is on treatment. Levels reducing. That tells you that patient is responding to the treatment. So it has a prognostic value rather than diagnostic. Screening, we have a screening score, that is the Risk of Malignancy Index Scoring System, RMI. RMI score, if it is more than 200, it suggests that patient is high risk for malignancy. How this score is calculated? If the patient is menopausal, score is given. It's actually the multiplication of USG score, menopausal score, and CA-125 levels. So USG score is calculated by whether the cyst is multilocular, solid area, bilateral, metastasis, ascites. The score given is 0 to 3. If no abnormality, 0. If one abnormality, 1. If 2 or more abnormalities, the score is either given 3 or 4, RMI 1, RMI 2. If the patient is premenopausal, then the score given is 1. If she is postmenopausal, the score given is 3. And whatever value of CA-125 she has, you multiply these three things and then the score is calculated. If it is more than 200, it suggests that she is very high risk for malignancy. Investigations to be done in case where there is ovarian lump. Total blood count, LFTs, RFTs, chest X-ray, ECG. Tumor markers like CA-125, alpha-fetoprotein, beta-HCG, CEA, ultrasound, abdomen and pelvis to look for kidney and liver as well, CT scan, MRI and endoscopy. Tumor markers are specific in some cancers. Endodermal sinus tumor or yolk sac tumor, the marker is AFP. So tumor markers, every tumor has specific tumor markers. Endodermal sinus tumor or yolk sac tumor has marker as AFP, alpha-fetoprotein. Epithelial ovarian tumor, serous, has CA-125, and epithelial tumor, mucinous variety, has CEA as the marker. Sertoli cell, Leydig cell and Hylas cell tumors has testosterone as the marker. Dysgerminoma, LDH and LKPO4, that is already discussed before. Choriocarcinoma, HCG. Granulosa cell tumor, inhibin. It secretes estrogen and inhibin both, but inhibin can be used as marker. FIGO staging for ovarian tumors. Now remember that FIGO staging for ovarian tumors is surgical. In CA cervix it was clinical. Now in FIGO staging for ovarian tumors we have surgical staging. So whenever we open the abdomen, we have to do certain things and the report of which cumulatively tells us what is the stage of that particular patient. Now let's go through the staging first. Stage 1, tumor is restricted to either one or both ovaries. The capsule is intact. Stage 1A, the tumor is either to one ovary, the node tumor on external surface, capsule intact, and the ascitic fluid is negative for malignant cells. Stage 1B, Tumor can be on both the surface, both the ovaries, but the surface not showing any growth, capsule is intact, and again ascitic fluid is negative for malignant cells. Stage 1C, either stage 1A or B, but here now ascitic fluid or peritoneal washings would be positive for malignant cells. Treatment in this case is TH with BSO with omentectomy. But it depends. If the patient is of young age, then in stage 1A or 1B, we can just remove that particular ovary where the tumor is, look at the other ovary. If that ovary is normal, we can still conserve that ovary. Because this tumor is stage 1A, there is no involvement of other ovary. And we have taken ascitic fluid and everything, which the report will tell us whether it is positive for malignant cells or not. Stage 2, the tumor involves one or both ovaries and there is pelvic extension. In stage 2A, the extension would be to the uterus, tubes or both. 2B, the extension will be to the other pelvic organs, and in 2C, there would be either extension to the pelvic organs 2A or 2B, ruptured capsule, ascites would be positive for malignant cells, or if there is no ascites, then whatever peritoneal washings we have taken, that would show malignant cells. The treatment is again total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy with omentectomy. Stage 3, tumor involve one or both the ovaries with there are microscopic implants outside the pelvis and the nodes will be positive. So there is histological evidence of spread to the bowel, omentum and superficial metastasis to the liver. So stage 3A is limited to pelvis, nodes are negative and microscopic seedlings are seen to the peritoneum. 3B, tumor with abdominal peritoneal implants less than 2 centimeters and nodes negative. 3C, abdominal implants are more than 2 centimeter and nodes positive. In stage 3, the patient is inoperable, but still we go for debulking surgery where we reduce the tumor load and then post-operatively chemotherapy or radiotherapy can be given. Stage 4, where the growth involves one or both the ovaries with distant metastasis to either liver, lung or pleura. Again, the management is debulking or cytoreductive surgery and followed by post-operative chemotherapy or radiotherapy. Now, what is the technique for surgical staging? As I told you that in ovarian we do surgical staging. So once we diagnose or from investigation it is suggestive that the tumor which we are dealing with is malignant, we have to post the patient for surgical staging, that is a laparotomy. Preferably midline incision is to be taken so that incision if required can be extended upwards. That gives adequate access for surgical staging and we can do full inspection of the peritoneal cavity including diaphragm and liver surfaces. If there is presence of ascites, the moment we reach the peritoneal cavity, we should take that fluid and send it for presence of malignant cells because that decides in which stage the tumor is. If there is no ascites, then we have to put normal saline inside the peritoneal cavity, give a wash and then recollect this fluid which is a peritoneal wash now and send it for cytology to see presence of malignant cells in that. Then we need to look at the ovaries, whether only single ovary is involved, other ovary is involved or it looks normal, how is the surface, whether the capsule ruptured, not ruptured, and then perform the surgery accordingly. If age of the patient allows, then we can go for total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. Along with that, we should do infracolic omentectomy. Peritoneal biopsies. Look for seedlings on the peritoneal surface. If there are implants or seedlings seen, then biopsy is to be taken from that site. If no, then random biopsies are to be taken from peritoneal surfaces or suspicious areas. Diaphragmatic scrapings can be taken. Even liver is to be seen and the surface or the scraping is to be taken from that. We should look for pelvic and para-aortic lymph nodes. If they are enlarged, then we should take samples from those lymph nodes as well. So then cumulatively the report would decide that what is the stage of the tumor and then we will go ahead with post-operative chemotherapy or radiotherapy. In case where this is not done, like total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy cannot be done, then we just try to remove maximum tumor tissue to decrease the tumor load, or to decrease, this is called as cytoreductive surgery, means we are reducing the tumor cells so that the post-operative chemotherapy would be more effective. If the tumor is benign, we have discussed this before, we can just go for USG guided cyst aspiration, or we can do ovarian cystectomy or unilateral ovariotomy, laparoscopic cystectomy or ovariotomy. And in case if her age allows us, she has already completed her family and she is perimenopausal, then we can also go for TAH with BSO. In borderline tumors, in elderly patients, total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is a treatment of choice. In malignant tumors, stage 1 and 2, total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy with omentectomy is the complete treatment. In stage 3 and 4, at least go for debulking, and then in this we can have either chemotherapy given first to reduce the mass, then the surgery, and then post-operatively chemo or radio. Or we can go for cytoreductive surgery, then there would be chemotherapy for 6 to 8 cycles depending on the patient and the tumor, and then there is something called as second look surgery or second look laparotomy. Now what is second look laparotomy? Again a question can be asked on this. So when the patient is been operated and then she is on chemotherapy, gradually the tumor mass reduces in size. So on examination no tumor is felt. If you do investigations like ultrasound, CT, MRI, no tumor tissue is being found. So then when there is no clinical evidence of any remnant of the tumor, then we plan a surgery, either laparoscopic or laparotomy. We go inside, look at the area from where the tumor has arisen. We go and take biopsies from there. Again we take peritoneal biopsies, omental biopsies, and biopsies from all the suspicious areas. And if microscopically or histopathologically these biopsies are negative for malignant cells, then we can assure the patient that she is free of disease. But if these biopsies show presence of disease, then we have to continue chemotherapy for some more cycles if there is evidence of microscopic disease. So this was second look laparotomy or laparoscopic surgery. There are newer concepts for advanced cases, neoadjuvant chemotherapy. So this chemotherapy we can plan before debulking. Chemotherapy is given to shrink the tumor in size to make the surgery more effective. Then debulking is done, and then again chemotherapy has been started. Drugs used are cisplatin, ifosfamide, methotrexate, paclitaxel, and the regimes are either BEP, VAC or PVB. What are the complications of ovarian tumors? There can be torsion, which is the most common complication. There can be rupture, either traumatic or spontaneous. Infection is also found in ovarian tumor but it's rare, and pseudomyxoma peritonei. As I told you that mucinous cystadenoma or cystadenocarcinoma, the tumor ruptures, all these sticky mucinous substance gets released in the peritoneal cavity, and those cells get implanted on the peritoneal surfaces, and there is this sago gel appearance or sticky substance appearance. Even after removal of the tumor and this gel, these seedlings, they keep on secreting this mucinous substance. So in this case, the prognosis becomes very bad. The condition is called as pseudomyxoma peritonei. It is also seen in mucosal of appendix or CA appendix, that is carcinoma of appendix. So certain things to remember after a long topic. Most common ovarian tumor is epithelial cell tumor. Most common malignant tumor of ovary is serous cystadenocarcinoma. Most common benign tumor is dermoid cyst. Most common benign epithelial tumor is serous cystadenoma. Most common ovarian tumor found in pregnancy is serous cystadenoma. Most common tumor to undergo torsion is dermoid. Most common involvement of opposite ovary by metastasis, granulosa cell tumor. Most common radiosensitive ovarian tumor is dysgerminoma. Most common rapidly growing ovarian tumor is yolk sac tumor. Pseudomyxoma peritonei is seen with mucinous cystadenoma. Mixed syndrome is associated with ovarian fibroma, but pseudomixed syndrome is associated with Brenner, granulosa cell tumor or thecoma. Tumor arising from epithelium of urinary tract is a transitional epithelium is Brenner's tumor. Tumor associated with hyperpyrexia and hypercalcemia is mesonephroid tumor. Endodermal sinus tumor, it shows alpha fetoprotein. Granulosa cell tumor, unilateral in 98% and bilateral in 2%. Endodermal sinus tumor is always unilateral. It is never bilateral. So if it is asked which is the tumor which is always unilateral, then it's endodermal sinus tumor. Now let's have few MCQs for revision. Before that, let's go through the lymph nodes involved in ovarian carcinoma. There can be para-aortic, retroperitoneal, inguinal, internal iliac, external iliac, pelvic, sacral and obturator.